Hi, today the notorious skeptic wants to talk about Neo-McCarthyism of the left-wing kind. We constantly hear about Russia nowadays. It's all Russia's fault. It's Russia's fault Trump is president. Russia invaded the Crimea. Russia is supporting Assad in Syria. But what I find strange is that nowadays we constantly keep hearing this from the left. Why is the left suddenly so obsessed with Russia? Since the 50s and 60s, if you're obsessed with Russia or you think they're interfering with stuff, you're supposed to be a fringe conspiracy theorist. You're supposed to be this far-right McCarthyist figure who thinks that everything that's to the left of hardcore conservatism, anyone who's not completely nationalistic is automatically a communist and is working for Stalin. But now suddenly, Putin has become the biggest evil of all time. He's worse than Stalin, he's worse than Mao, and anyone who has the slightest ties to Russia is a suspect. What caused this turnaround? I've heard it was because of Russia's invasion of the Crimea, and I understand that people disagree with that, but it traditionally was a part of Russia, so I don't really think that indicates that they have this plan for large-scale world domination. I mean, they just wanted a harbor, and obviously that's foreign aggression, and I can understand that people consider that wrong, but obviously the Ukraine and Russia have this whole complicated history, but really, why do we care here in the West? During the Vietnam War, the left kept arguing that the entire war in Vietnam was more of a local nationalistic conflict and that any communist support for North Vietnam was mainly secondary and that we shouldn't involve ourselves in it. So why did suddenly this conflict in the Ukraine cause such a big turnaround on public opinion towards Putin? Is it because the EU has interests in Ukraine? Is that the reason? It seems rather odd. One reason that nowadays people are critical of Putin is because he supports Assad. And I can understand that people dislike Assad or even hate him because he's a dictator who uses violence and all that. But what I find strange is that the left has traditionally argued for non-interference, but now they suddenly seem to be so strongly in favor of interference. They didn't really want to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and obviously they had at least somewhat of a point there because it didn't exactly stabilize the region. But then again, the Obama administration didn't much help after the withdrawal of troops to create a more stable Middle East, and they totally mishandled the Arab Spring, but that's neither here nor there. What I don't get is why when Assad, even though he's a dictator, is at least one of the few dictators in that area who keeps some stability and who protects Christians, that so many on the left are obsessed with overthrowing him, while they don't want to overthrow the dictatorship in Iran that's far more Sharia-based and far more violent. I just really don't get that, and I don't understand why they're so opposed to Putin supporting this dictatorship, because you're really not going to tell me the United States doesn't remember that they've supported quite a couple of dictatorships as well, including in the Middle East. Often it's just very pragmatic. It is what keeps the United States, Europe, and most of the world safe. But so, why is there this obsession with Assad when he doesn't seem to really be supporting terrorism against the United States? He's mainly repressive towards his own people, but then again, so are most of the dictators in the Middle East. And would overthrowing Assad really help to create stability in the Middle East? Shouldn't our priority be finishing off ISIS? Shouldn't it be to just create a lasting coexistence there? If Assad is going to be replaced, is he going to be replaced by a fanatical Muslim regime that's going to persecute Christians, or would they actually be able to find a more enlightened and a more secular regime? But even if they could find one, would it not be completely destabilized and easily overthrown, as basically happened in Iraq, where ISIS was capable of coming to power? Could they on the one hand fight a regime that was less cruel than Assad, but still capable of keeping order in an area where cruelty is generally the way to exert control? That's what I really wonder. I mean, we still allow dictatorships to exist in Saudi Arabia and in most parts of North and Middle and even Southern Africa. And it kind of reminds me of the whole issue of apartheid. Obviously, apartheid was wrong and it was racist, but there was this very specific obsession with the racism in South Africa, while you had the slaughter of Boers in Zimbabwe, you had multiple civil wars, and genocides in Rwanda, where countless black people were victimized as well. Often there seems to be a political agenda. Only colored people can be cruel towards colored people, when really, cruelty is just wrong in general. So I just don't see why there's this sudden obsession with Russia and why there are all these conspiracy theories, when personally I think it's far more important to fight ISIS, and I think it's important to fight terrorism in general, and there are a lot of other things to worry about, including a high crime rate. And I'm not saying I'm cheering for Assad, or that I'm cheering for Putin, or that I want Trump to be friends with Putin, but I just don't understand why suddenly there's this climate of fear surrounding that instead of surrounding the terrorist attacks on Paris. And I don't understand why, once again, all of these issues are becoming politicized in the wrong way. Most of us can agree that terrorism is wrong and that we need to fight it. I don't like how it's being used for partisan attacks, just as how the Orlando massacre was used on the one hand to attack Christians, but on the other hand to support gun rights and to support very strong anti-Islamic policies. It just became a political ploy for both the left and the right, and really, does anybody just care about victims of terrorism anymore? I wonder, but I especially just wonder why there's this obsession with Russia, and yeah, just can't we finish off ISIS first? To me, that really has priority, and I don't see why people care so much about this one dictatorship in Syria. I think it's very odd, and it's probably going to lead to more support for conspiracy theories that the Democrats want some kind of Islamic revolution in the Middle East, and I don't think that's what they want, so it seems to be rather bad for PR. I'm just saying. The more pressing issue seems to be what to do with the Kurds. And not only that, but what's going to happen with Erdogan in Turkey. I mean, you're not going to tell me he isn't a dictator at this point, so why isn't he being given priority? It's interesting that a new dictatorship seems to be on the rise in Turkey that might abolish secularism there, but that people seem to have this obsession with Assad, while those on the right seem to have an obsession with defending him at all costs. Where really, it once again to me just raises the question, who cares? Aren't there more important things? So yeah, those were just some skeptic remarks. Bye.